Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good, Fiona. How are you?
Good, 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 good. Sarah interviewed me the other day, so I really wanted to return the favor, Sarah, because you interviewed me about obviously my essential oils and gratitude, which was so lovely. I must share it. Um, but now I want to ask you about what you do because it's so interesting, and I do feel it will help a lot of people with whatever's going on at the minute, whatever all this is. So, okay, so I know you do NLP. Sarah is a really good friend of mine, and she's my neighbour as well. So, and I know you do NLP. So, would you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I always wonder what exactly it is. A kind of an idea, but not 100%.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm an NLP trainer and I'm a master transformational coach. And NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. It's the worst name in the world for, in my eyes, one of the best systems in the world for changing our mindset, how we interpret and how we make sense of the experiences that we're having. And as a result of being able to change the lenses, essentially, that we see the world through, and therefore have the experiences that we're having, it changes then how we feel about those. And then by changing how we feel, it changes actually what we do. So our behavior is changed without having to go into stories, without having to go into the past, drag everything up, without having to have any labels, without having to have a diagnosis of anything, without looking for what's wrong. NLP is about looking actually for what's right with somebody. So it's radically different from a lot of other talk therapies in the sense that most counseling, psychotherapy, things like that are very focused on the problem. They're focused on what's happening in that person's life, what other things have happened in that person's life that are similar to this, and to be able to go in and really kind of, reactivate a lot of those emotions connected to those past stories. And unfortunately, what happens then is that, the person can often be left actually kind of floundering in those emotions because they've brought it, when we think about something, it does, it's quite interesting. There's a very common saying, which is actually not true, is time heals. Time heals everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know about you, but I've certainly got things that when I think about from the past can still be just as painful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Even if years and years and years have gone past. And well, not really so much for me now because I have ways of dealing with it. But if we just don't do anything with those stories, the way that we saw the world at that time that event happened, and we go through life believing that that's exactly what happened and our version was right and we were right to feel the way that we did, and nothing happens to change that. Nothing happens to change it. So whenever we think about it, the same worldview is happens that we did at the time, and as a result we feel the same way. And what's really interesting is our unconscious mind, the part of it that's running our body, the part of us that's in control of our emotions, it's got all of our programming and conditioning and our values and our beliefs and decisions that we've made around the world. It's massive, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't know when we're thinking about something, is it really happening now or is it our imagination?
Okay.
It actually doesn't know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So when we remember something painful from the past, or we even imagine something, painful happening to us in the future, the unconscious mind believes it's happening right here, right now, and therefore the emotions are activated as if it's happening in the moment. And most people don't realize that. They don't really make that connection that, this reaction that we're having is not based on reality, whatever that is, because everyone's reality is completely different, but it's not based on current events. It could be based in the past, it could be based in the future. So NLP is very much about saying, okay, so if we're having this reaction and it's not even happening right here, right now, what can we do about it? Because obviously having a negative emotional reaction to something, negative emotions are okay. I'm not putting negative emotions down. It's not about just being happy and positive and having a positive frame of mind all the time. That's not humanly possible. And being human means we have emotions, and emotions help us to understand and to navigate through our world. It's our compass, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But if we are constantly bringing up negative emotions and we constantly feel a negative state, then that in itself is not very helpful. We're not doing anything. The emotions only making us feel bad. It's not really helping us in a way that actually helps us to change, our perspective, or to change the way that we're doing it. So NLP is very much about that. It's very much about looking at okay, so what are these lenses that we're using to have these experiences? And how can we change our lenses? It's not about changing anyone else's. We don't have that control and that power. It's very much about saying, you know, what's working, what's not working. And as a result of what's not working, you know, what can we do? What can we do differently? So it's very outcome focused. It's very solution focused. And my favorite thing of all is that actually the person with the problem has the solution.
Yeah. Yeah, we always do, don't we? We have it and we don't even realize.
Who else? Who else? I mean, I'm sure that you've had this experience, Fiona, where someone has said to you, do you know what you should do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You know what you should do? You should do X, Y, Z. And I'm sure in your head you're going, and you know what you should do?
I've never said it out loud.
No, I just never do that. The problem with that is that whilst our human nature says that, you know, we're always trying to help people and we, you know, we think we have an idea of what's going on, we will never know really what's happening inside somebody else's world, inside their head, inside their body, inside their emotional, you know, reaction to something. They can give us some clues and some hints because they might be yelling or crying or laughing or whatever, but we won't really fully understand it. And the reality is we don't even really fully understand ourselves. Yeah, you know, how many times have we said, you know, have you said to yourself, why do I do that? You know, God, what's wrong with me? You know, God, I know better. I know, you know, so there are other things going on that's deeply, deeply unconscious that NLP actually helps to delve into without going into stories. It's a much more about processes. Like, what are the processes that we use to have the experiences that we're having and to behave the way that we behave, to have the reactions that we do.
Okay.
And once we can understand ourselves better, we can change things. But most of really why we behave the way we do is very hidden. It's very unconscious. It's very, you know, habitual. We don't even know we're doing it. We may never know we're doing it. You know, it's just kind of habits. And when we're in a heightened state of emotion, we're even less in control and aware, really, you know, of what we're doing or necessarily why. We can say why in terms of the story, but like what's actually driving us inside, that's a much more interesting question for me to find out what's really going on inside that person so that they can make the changes that are right for them to get the results that they want. So it's quite different from just talking about stuff. It's very solution focused, very action focused.
I used to think that NLP was a lot to do with teaching people how to read and write.
No, that's because that's something else that I do employ my NLP training.
I getcha. Okay.
No, I work with people of all ages. Predominantly my one-to-one clients would be adults who would have some sort of issues. It can be all kinds of things from anxiety, depression. I mean, I've helped a lot of people come off antidepressants.
Wow.
Because they've changed their model of the world, they've changed their lenses. And as a result of that, they haven't had the same emotional overwhelm or that kind of numbness that a lot of people have with depression, or a sense of hopelessness or helplessness. I've helped people with suicidal ideation. I've helped people with lack of motivation. I've helped people who are having a problem with their partners, with their kids. You know, if at work they're finding themselves overly stressed. You know, I do a lot of work with directors and executives in companies who are feeling really burnt out, which at the moment is now a huge problem around the world.
I can imagine.
And in really a very, very short space, and I'm talking maybe by the second or third session with me, things have fundamentally changed for them. And they cannot go back to their original way of thinking. So this isn't about white knuckling it and having to consciously change. So a lot of people would liken NLP to CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. But what CBT does not take into account is actually the body. It doesn't take into account the emotions. It purely relies on what we are cognitive of, what we are cognizant of, what are we aware of. But if you think about it, actually what we are aware of is tiny compared to what's going on. It's a little bit like saying, you know, so what we are seeing now on the screen is a result of all the hardware and the software that's going on behind it. We don't see all of that working. It's all encased inside the laptop or the desktop. What we see is the screen, and that's the same as our conscious mind. It's only the screen. So if you could change something on the screen, it doesn't change the hardware or the software behind it. NLP goes much deeper. It goes into the unconscious. It looks for that programming that may have been instilled at age 5 when your younger sister was born, or 15 when someone, when people, I have a lot of people actually who in adult life are having the same situation that maybe happened to them when they were children or their teens, maybe some sort of bullying or anxiety around not being good, not feeling good enough, what's called in psychology imposter syndrome, constantly question themselves. And it is exhausting to live like that, to live in this negative state. Other people won't know that this is what's happening, because it's only them who's experiencing it. But for them, it's exhausting and it's draining. So it's very much about really altering their own perceptions, their own filters, to create an inner world, their world. Our own reality is always inside of us, so that it really matches who they genuinely are, become much more genuine and authentic in who they are. Wow. And that's about getting rid of limiting beliefs, old decisions, old values, things that don't serve them anymore. Really finding out, what's in their way.
It sounds amazing, because it helps them look to a brighter future and not always to be dwelling in the past and past memories.
Absolutely not.
Repressed emotions.
Absolutely. So NLP is also, I incorporate, I have, you can see a lot of certificates on the back wall. I've been studying this for nearly 20 years. Wow. And I've been studying personal development in one way or another for the last nearly 20 years. And I personally use a whole toolbox of things. So I don't just do NLP. When someone comes to me, if they were to come to me and then go to another NLP practitioner, they'd probably be thinking, did she even do NLP? But I use I've kind of created a lot of my own techniques and systems as a result of what I've learned. But NLP is always the core of it. It's the understanding of how is it we're actually having the experiences that we're having, and what can we do about it. And the good news is nothing's fixed. Nothing is fixed in stone.
Yeah. Okay.
So some people might just go, but that's just the way I am.
Yeah.
And the reality is, well, no, that's just habit. It's just, that's the pathways that we're used to using inside of us. That's the program that's running us at an unconscious level. We just believe that's who we are because we haven't found a way to change it that's effective. It's not enough to just want to change it and to have an idea that we want to change it. We have to really uncover and go quite deep into actually what's really going on underneath the surface. Sometimes it's not too deep under the surface, and sometimes it is quite deep. It just depends on the person and what is they want to clear.
Yeah. Wow, sounds amazing. What I love about it is they don't have to kind of dwell up the past and tell you their problems, because that problem mightn't even be the problem. It could be something else.
Well, generally it's not. Generally, when someone comes in to me to work with me and they start talking, I know that actually what they are talking about is the symptom of the problem.
Yeah.
It's the result of the problem. It's not the problem itself.
Yeah.
So if we just talk about the problem, the symptoms, we're not really solving anything at a deep level. And whilst it's good to talk and it's good to kind of get things off your chest, and of course it is, the reality is just by talking about something doesn't necessarily change actually what's driving that in the first place. And in order to go to a counsellor who can help you do that, they have to be incredibly skilled to be able to guide you inside. We don't need to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
We just have to, it's a much more direct, it really cuts through right into the heart actually of the matter for a lot of people. And people are always amazed at what comes out of their mouths. When I ask certain questions, they're just going, where did that come from?
Wow.
It came from somewhere, and it was obviously inside of them.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is the person with the problem actually also has the solution. They just don't know where to look. They haven't realized that we often ask other people, what do you think and what should I do? And we look outside of ourselves for solutions, but the reality is we'll only take on a solution if it fits.
And some people get so used to being ill and being that way that they just feel that this is the way I am, this is the way, there is no cure, I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life.
Exactly. This is just the way I am. Or, and one of the things that's always interested to me is the difference between nurture and nature as well. So for example, with depression, a lot of people say, it could be hereditary, it runs in families.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if you think about it, if you know, we learn when we're younger, the predominant way that we learn is actually by observation.
Yeah.
We learn by modeling the people around us. We look at how did they do. They are teaching us how to be in the world. So if we see one of our parents, you know, not dealing with things very well, taking to the bed, taking, you know, withdrawing, becoming completely disconnected from the family, you know, not able to deal with the world and therefore withdrawing into themselves and from life, then as a child, what do you learn? Well, you learn that when life gets tough, that's what you have to do, unless you make a very, very conscious and difficult decision to do something different. You know, so just because someone's parent might have had a problem like depression or even alcoholism or things like that, you know, addictions. I've helped people with addictions as well. Wow. To very successfully, you know, get out of that.
Wow.
And I've helped people, you know, even really, really serious issues such as abuse from their childhood and things like that, without them having to tell me the details.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that means a lot.
Incredible, and to me, I'm so passionate about it because there's nothing better than somebody leaving my office and they have left their problems behind. And I don't mean with me, because I'm not taking them on board either. That wouldn't be very useful. But they have genuinely put the problems down. They've looked at them differently. They have a different feeling about themselves, and they walk away and they just go, it's gone. It's fundamentally gone, and in a very, very short space of time. And that's what I love about it. It's the power to really help people make changes really, really quickly.
Wow. And how many how long would it take, do you think, now, say someone comes to you with depression? I know everybody's going to be completely different, but like, you know, roughly, you know, is there an average, like, of how long it would take from first appointment to last appointment? Or do they keep coming back?
Generally speaking, the most people have would be 3 or 4 sessions.
3 or 4 sessions. I think I have company.
I saw that.
That's very good. 3 or 4 sessions. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, this is not, because it is very solution focused. It's very much about, so when the person comes in, it's about identifying where are they. So they tell me where they are, and they ask them, well, where do they want to be instead? How do they want to be instead? What do they want as an outcome of this? I love doing the magic wand question. You know, if you could wave a magic wand in these situations, how would you like to be? The fact that they can answer me tells me they already have their solution.
Yeah. And we just don't realize it.
Just don't realize it, or there's something, we know it, but there's something blocking us. So my job is to investigate where are the blocks, where are the barriers, and I call them invisible walls, because we might see we might know where we want to go. We can see that kind of goal ahead of us, and we go towards it, and something sort of holds us back, and we don't know what it is. And when we get kind of held back too often, sometimes we just go, well, that's just not for me. Obviously, I'm not able to achieve that. And the reality is, you know, if you can think of and imagine yourself different, if you can imagine yourself behaving differently, it's already in there. You couldn't have the solution and imagine that, you know, without knowing already.
It makes so much sense. I'm actually doing a program at the minute. It's called Thinking into Results. It's a Bob Proctor course, and everything you're saying, that's exactly what I'm learning. Subconscious mind, and it controls our bodies, and it controls 96 to 98% of everything we do.
Well, actually, what's interesting about the mind and the body is that we essentially have 3. So think of sort of 3 boxes. I mean, they're interlinked. We have our conscious mind. So what are we thinking? What are we focusing on? We have our emotional body, and then we have our physical body, the physiological responses that our body has then to emotions, and vice versa. Actually, 80% of the information that travels in the body is from the body up to the mind. Only 20% of information is traveling from the brain, this brain, down into the body. So the conscious mind is absolutely minute. It's tiny. It can only cope with about 50 bits of information per second. That sounds like a lot. I'm not talking about 50 ideas. I'm talking about 50 tiny bits of information per second. We can bring in, through our senses, the information from the outside world. We can bring in over 11 million bits of information per second.
Wow.
Unconscious mind has the capacity to deal with 86 billion to the power of 10,000 bits of information per second.
Oh my God. That's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
And we think our little conscious mind, the little 50 bit per second, what we're aware of is in control.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just the end result. And if we give that control, it's actually not even real anyway. Our emotional state will always win out over logic because it's so much more powerful. The unconscious mind doesn't communicate in language and in logic. It communicates in emotion, in sensations, in metaphors, in symbolism, in physical manifestations. So sometimes we are, we have dis-ease, and it's a manifestation of an emotional state that hasn't been released, and the body, it becomes this very dense energy inside the body, and we can end up with these medical conditions that are actually generated by, guess what, stress. Wow. And where does stress come from? Stress comes from up here, what we're thinking, what we're focusing on, and the body is trying to get our attention because it doesn't want this. Mm-hmm. And if we don't listen, eventually it'll use the hard way. Yeah. And we can be really stopped in our tracks. And I really feel, especially at the moment with what's going on, our bodies really need to be energized and need to be as strong as possible, because lockdown will eventually end and we will end up in the outside world again. And if we have been sitting in a state of fear, which causes stress and tension, and then releases cortisol, stress hormone, and adrenaline, and that we are not designed to have that production of those chemicals in our body all the time. Yeah. We're just literally not designed for that, and things will start to malfunction. Mm-hmm. And our immune system is one of the first things to go. So for me, this is not just about feeling happier. It's about being actually, really taking care of ourselves in a much more responsible way. And our mental health is absolutely dictates our physical health. So it's really, really important that we understand that connection. And most people don't realize they have the control that they actually have. Mm-hmm. It's quite interesting because when people kind of go, oh, it's just positive thinking. No, it's not, because you can't just make the screen positive. You have to know what's going on behind that in order that's generating those negative thoughts in the first place. And to really be able to bring back that locus of control inside of us. And to me, it's empowering.
Definitely is. Wow, it's amazing. Because I know we don't have an awful lot of time left, but I want to talk about the other thing that you do as well. Because how can you give us any advice with homeschooling now and keeping everyone on an even keel? Because I just noticed kids who go to school and they sit nice and quiet in their classrooms, but they can't seem to do it in their homes.
Well, the reality is, especially young children, because I know you have young primary school children. I have one primary, one secondary. And number one is this: children are not designed to sit still for hours on end.
Yeah.
They're not designed to do that. Actually, in a primary school classroom, you'll see they get up, they move around. There's a lot more movement than probably we realize. When we're at home, we're not there. We think, oh, they go in, they sit down, but they're out there in the playground. They've got their break times. They've got their PE lessons. If they have a very good teacher, and I know my younger son's teacher was absolutely fantastic this year, in that she would get them to stand up to do their maths, and they would play games, and they would physically move around. Great. Way better.
Oh. Yeah. Gets the brain moving as well and gets you thinking.
The body, children are not little robots that are designed to just sit still. And my 10-year-old is definitely not designed to sit still. In fact, you probably can't see, but I have a couch. This is my office. This is my consulting room. Okay. And today he was literally headstand on the couch, and he was doing his mental maths upside down. What are you going to do?
Oh my God.
There's no point killing myself trying to make him sit still, because actually that doesn't work for him, and it's causing him stress, and it's causing me stress. So yeah, I do a lot of work in the field of education. I'm a bit obsessed really when it comes to understanding how do people learn, and how can I help people to learn more effectively and to actually enjoy learning, the process of learning, and how to be able to remember things better. So I do all kinds of things. I teach speed reading courses. I've worked with primary school students, secondary and third level. I've gone into companies and I've taught all kinds of things. And But one of the areas that I do a lot of work in is actually learning difficulties. And by going into that area, I learned an awful lot then about how to help people who don't have learning difficulties.
Okay.
And one of the main things actually is to help the brain to get ready to learn.
Okay.
So let me ask you, Viola, let me ask you a question. How do you, when you're learning at your best, how do you feel?
When I'm learning something I want to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Motivated, excited. I'm just thinking about when I'm doing my course now at the minute, and I love it. I feel like I want to learn. I want to, know more.
Yeah. And so how does your brain feel?
When I'm learning, I suppose overwhelmed sometimes, I suppose. And
But when you're really getting something, so when you're learning at your best, so
Hmm.
when you're really getting something, when it's making sense to you, just think about, how does that feel? How does it feel in your body? How does it feel in your mind?
When you actually get it, what you're learning, just I suppose a sense of achievement and fulfillment, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, that's like, I don't know, it's like a light bulb moment, I suppose.
Yeah, I use light bulbs. In actual fact, I have one of my set of students bought me a little thing. It's got a little light bulb on it with a little chain, because I use that expression all the time as well. It's to me,
Okay.
it is about light bulbs, and it's really
And it's
interesting when we get something, we actually release a chemical called dopamine.
okay.
It actually physically feels good.
Yeah.
Our body actually has a
Makes sense.
reaction.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm addicted to the dopamine of learning, I have to say. I'm totally addicted to it. I love that feeling of just getting something. Doesn't mean I just get it. It means I've worked to get it, and then I'm reading something, and suddenly these things click into place, and boom, it all kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So compare that to when you're not learning at your best.
Oh.
What's the difference? Look at your face.
It's painful. It's absolutely painful to have to sit through something that you don't want to be sitting through, and you just don't take
How
it.
well do you remember that information?
You don't. I don't. No.
Nobody does. Nobody does. We actually have a little part of the brain. It's tiny. We have a left and a right hemisphere. It's called a hippocampus. And this little part of the brain is crucial for learning. In fact, without it, there's no way we would have any memory.
Okay.
So everything that we experience in the world pretty much goes through the hippocampus, and through a very, we really don't understand exactly how it works, but through a very complex series of networks, we then decide, are we going to keep the information or are we going to discard it?
Okay.
And if we're going to keep it, it then gets transferred into our long-term memory. And then hopefully when we need it, it'll come back through the hippocampus and out into our conscious memory and out into the world. So it's where the information is transferred back and forth between the front of our brain and the back of our brain, and wherever else we're storing information. Now, for that to function effectively, we have to be calm.
Okay.
We have to be calm. If we are stressed, if we are bored, if we are anxious, if we're distracted, if we're doing something else, and that part and our body feels that somehow we're under threat or under attack in some way, the little dendrites in the hippocampus actually can pull back.
Okay.
Which means information doesn't pass from the front of the brain to the back of the brain and vice versa.
Yeah.
I know I personally had a horrific experience in my first A-level. So I studied in England, I did A-levels, and I'm an engineer originally. That's my background, so I love anything that kind of solves problems.
Wow, you've done a lot.
I'm about 100 years old, and physics.
Looking good.
Wonders of makeup. So physics was my best subject. I knew it inside out, upside down, and the first paper. All of my A-levels was one of my physics papers. And I went in, and I had made the mistake of standing with the headless chickens before. So the headless chickens are, did you study this? Did you study that? You know the ones, yeah?
Yeah.
And they're all talking about what they've studied and what they've learned. And of course, what does your brain do? Your brain's always looking for danger. Your brain's always looking for, like, what is it I don't know? And of course, the minute you hear something you don't know and you latch onto that, you suddenly get the sense of, oh my God, I actually maybe don't know anything. And I became really panicked before I went into this exam. Never had this experience before. Sat down and went completely blank.
Oh my God.
completely blank. Just the shutter came down, and I remember just looking at this paper, and for 2 hours struggling to get. And the little voice inside my head, we all talk to ourselves, kept saying, you know this. And I had another voice that was like, I know this, but I can't get it. And the harder I tried to remember the information, of course, the further away it was slipping.
Wow.
And I came out of that totally shell-shocked. I just couldn't believe it. I maybe answered 5 or 6 questions out of 30. I knew I'd failed. Like, this was not a case of someone going, oh, I haven't done very well, and then it's got an A. It was not one of those situations. I knew I had failed that paper. Yeah. And I was absolutely gutted. I mean, there was 2 years of schoolwork just disappeared in a flash in this exam.
Wow.
And about 2 hours later, I was, I was at boarding school, so I was back in my room, and I was lying on my bed looking at the ceiling. And of course, by then I had calmed down, and the adrenaline had disappeared and everything else. And I suddenly could see the whole paper in my head, and I knew all the answers.
Oh,
and I should have got an A. And I remember being so confused as to what happened, because it was important to me. I worked hard, I did, everything I was supposed to do, and yet I had this horrific experience. And I'm so glad I did, because from then on, I had this question in my head of, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened? And I did a master's at NUI Galway a few years ago, and I did it on adult learning and development. And when we got to the psychology of learning, and I was doing my thesis and doing some research, and I found this tiny little piece of research that was talking about when we are stressed and we release cortisol, excessive levels of cortisol can make the dendrites in the hippocampus wither and pull back. And immediately I understood what had happened. It was all about stress. So I just encourage, back to your question, I do go off on tangents, but I normally come back.
No, that was very interesting. And before you go back to my question, doesn't it make exams seem so unfair? So unfair. Like, everything we learn goes into the conscious mind.
People who are good at exams, generally speaking, have got the right strategy for memorizing and regurgitating.
Yeah. That's all it is. That's all it is.
All it is. How many times have you done an exam, held the information just long enough to put it down on paper, and then promptly forgotten it as soon as you've left the exam hall?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how is that learning? That's just surface learning. That's not deep learning. That's not really understanding core. I do a lot of tutoring with maths, and I know a lot of people think I'm a bit
as well.
Yeah, I do. I told you I do a lot. So I was like, I don't know what you're going to ask me, but
go on anyway. Go back to what I asked you earlier.
So in terms of helping our children at the moment, and look, this is a tough situation because you could be working. Somebody could be juggling several roles, so they could be working. They're the ones who are predominantly looking after the children. They're doing all the cooking, all the housework, all of the shopping. Whatever it is, and it could be either way. I'm not just talking about women. It could be the husband or the partner, the male partner that way. And the reality is, number one, my biggest advice is be kind to yourself. Okay. Be kind to yourself. Mm-hmm. If you feel like you're spinning plates or you're juggling balls, whatever analogy you want to use, I often feel like spinning plates.
Yeah.
And you continuously try to have everything perfect, and this is not business as usual. We are in a very, very unusual situation at the moment. It's no longer business as usual. We're going to have to adjust our expectations of ourselves and adjust our expectation of our children. We cannot expect young children to get what's going on. So primary school kids, it might have been a bit of a novelty at the beginning, but they will respond way better in terms of from an authority point of view to their teachers than to us as parents.
Of course, yeah.
Because they know we're going to love them anyway. They don't know if their teacher's going to like them if they misbehave. There's a totally different dynamic going on inside of a classroom.
Yeah.
So don't expect kids to just sit down as if they're at school and to be able to just have that, to translate that behavior from one to the other. As I said, I have a child who's in secondary school. He's only 14, and to expect our secondary school children to sit at screens all day long, whether it's on, well, he doesn't have it, very rarely has a Zoom classroom, but some of them do. But he's constantly got work coming in. He's on his laptop. He's on, he's trying to find information. I know adults that this is exhausting for.
Yeah. Of course.
You know, so we have to adjust our expectation of what is possible in this time for our children's education. We don't want to drop the ball, of course. We don't want them to regress. We don't, and children who are, you know, I can talk a little bit about kind of dyslexia, things like that as well. But, you know, if your child is perfectly capable of spelling and reading and they have those basic skills, don't get too worked up about the spelling lists and everything else. Research has actually shown there's only really two things that are really, really effective, you know, to do in terms of at home. This is generally about homework as opposed to what's going on in school. I know we've got school at home now, but two of the things that are really, really powerful to do, one is reading.
Okay.
And obviously it's better that they read things that they're interested in. So they can find their own reading books. They could find their own topics that they want to find things about. That would be much more empowering for them to have a bit of control as well. You know, don't forget, we all want control, and kids want control just as much as parents and as adults. And now they have no control. They don't get to see their friends. They don't get to see maybe their grandparents. You know, they don't get to go and do the things that they were used to doing, all their activities, or going to birthday parties or the cinema. It's just something really simple as just going to a coffee shop, you know, with mum on a Saturday morning or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, so they don't get to do all this stuff, so they've lost an awful lot of control over their worlds. So giving children control a little bit is a really good thing. You know, giving them choices. So what do they want to read? What would they like to, you know, talk about? Or what? And the second thing that's really good is projects. And you can incorporate different subjects into a project. You can incorporate maths, you can incorporate science, you can incorporate history, geography, you know, reading obviously is part of it. So actually doing a project and getting, I mean, it gets them thinking, and that's actually how we work in the real world, isn't it? We don't work with these separate subjects like, oh, I'm just doing this now, I'm not going to bring maths into this. Of course not. You bring maths into everything. I'm just going to do English now. It's like, no, you bring in English into everything.
Yeah.
You know, so projects actually are brilliant for really bringing together a lot of different strings of the education field and actually making it more real and more relatable for the child.
And
And having fun. My youngest had way more fun doing his projects than doing his schoolwork.
Yeah.
He didn't think of the project as schoolwork.
Yeah. That's it, you see.
But it is. So I think if parents really just want to just do what they, number one, just do what you can, you know, and they keep getting these messages. And I was reading a funny article the other day, and it was about, you know, actually what's pushed this mum over the edge is not the school or anything else. It's the mum's WhatsApp group from the school, you know, and everyone's having this competition. You know, they've been up and they've been doing yoga and they've been doing this and they've been cooking and and the mum's like, I'm just about, you know, coping here. I'm just about function, you know. So I think that just to readjust, let's just calm down. Let's just take a breath. You know, if your child is well able to learn, then they will catch up. And don't forget, all of the children are in the
same boat.
All in the same. Oh, I love this expression recently. We're not all in the same boat. We're all in the same storm. We've all got our own different boats that we're in, and I kind of like that a little bit more. But that some children, if their boats are pretty solid, they're good learners, they don't generally get in trouble at school, you know, they're always, you know, they're good at interacting, they're good at finding information, they're curious, you know, just give them some freedom to kind of really explore their curiosity and whatever it is that they love. Now, if a child is struggling though, if they have dyslexia or they have any kind of learning difficulty like that, now really is the time to really help them as a parent. And a lot of parents don't know what to do. So we're giving it for free. So if you okay to put the link underneath.
Cool, yeah, great.
An online program, and it's for spelling, reading, and handwriting.
Brilliant.
And we're doing live Facebook Lives on a Wednesday mornings for Q&A. Parents and teachers can contact us if they want. And I have used this process. I've taught staff from over 70 primary schools in Ireland.
Wow, amazing.
With huge, and I have an amazing school. I've got to give a shout out to St. Joseph's in Rathwire, the national school there. They have been using, they were my pilot school in 2013, and they're still using it today.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Had huge benefits from this. Wow. And it's two things. One is getting into a calm, relaxed body, alert mind, so the right state for learning, really crucial. So the whole school does that. And the second one is about mental imagery and about using our predominantly visual systems for learning.
Wow.
And it's really simple, really easy, and we've had some amazing feedback, you know, about it. And I've helped lots of children, you know, personally as well. You know, one-to-one, they come to me. And of course now it's not easy, but I can do them online if people, you know, want a bit of guidance and a bit of help. But we just say, look, we made a decision. We felt our hearts were going out to families where, you know, this is such an unusual situation, and to then have a child who's struggling at home as well, and parents are not given this information and not really, you know, we expect the schools to do it for us. We just said, let's just give it for free. It was already online. You know, we were going to go back and edit it and everything else, and we said, no, let's just send it out there. If people want it, they can have it. So we've had a few hundred people sign up to that, and yeah, we're not bombarding people with emails afterwards, and you know, there's no upselling or anything like that. It just is what it is.
Okay, that's amazing. And would that help even, you know, any child, even if they're not struggling, if they're, you know, it should probably help everybody.
Yeah, well, this school, St. Joseph's, uses it across the whole mainstream school. So they use it, you know, so you're learning to spell any word, whether it's in your English spelling list or it's in geography or history or maths or whatever it is. They use the same process, the same strategy. Mental imagery and visualization is really key for, obviously, when you're reading, to make sense of what you're reading. So developing mental imagery skills is key, and it's absolutely essential for mental arithmetic and for word problems and math, to be able to understand the question, what's the question asking you, and actually for handwriting as well. So I have had a lot of people who've done the course, the online course. Their children don't have any labels, but they've done it maybe to improve their kids' handwriting. I had one lovely little story of a 9-year-old who he watched, and kids can watch the course with the parents.
Perfect. Yeah, they'll understand it better. Yeah.
Yeah, and he watched the course with his mum, and he then won an award for the best handwriting in school, and he went from being completely illegible.
Oh, that is so lovely. Like, that would boost his confidence so much.
And that's the best side effect of all of this stuff, is actually children suddenly realize that as long as they adjust their strategies, they can learn.
Yeah.
That there's nothing actually wrong with them. They just have to be shown a different way of learning. And what we see is their self-confidence, their self-esteem just goes through the roof. It's one of my favorite things to see in the whole world is to see it, you know, a child who's been struggling just go, is that what I have to do? Yep. I can do that. And be able to suddenly, and you just see the you know, face lights up. And
oh, amazing. Oh my God, that sounds really good. Okay, right, we're running out of time. Tell us about the course you're starting on Saturday.
Yes, so normally when I teach NLP, I teach a practitioner and a master practitioner course, so people can go and they can use this professionally. They can become a coach, or they can plug it into whatever they're doing already and change, you know, their lives that way. But obviously, you know, live trainings, you know, actually being in the same room as someone is not possible at the moment. So what I decided to do is just do a very kind of, you know, stripped back version, an introduction to NLP and timeline therapy, which is fantastic for letting go of emotional baggage. It's 2 hours a week for 6 weeks on a Saturday morning from 10 till 12. And I am going to be giving, so I'm not teaching people to be practitioners, I'm teaching it for themselves. So I'm going to give, every week I will give at least 2 or 3 really positive, powerful techniques and tools that they can use to make the changes that they wanted at a deep level. It's a small group, so there's plenty of opportunities for questions and feedback and things like that. There's a maximum of 12, so there's a few places left.
Great.
And yeah, it's for anyone who, you can use it in anything, in your personal life. You can use it with your children, with your families, with your partner. Help communication, a little bit better communication, or work-wise, in terms of reducing stress. And as I said, I'm particularly concerned about, you know, people's stress levels, and I see more and more articles in the likes of The Economist and Forbes and Business Insider talking more and more about burnout and what's happening to people. Because if you're not in furlough, you're still working, then you've got probably double or maybe even triple the workload that you'll have, that people seem to be even busier, you know, at work. And this will just give people that opportunity to create a bit of space and breathing space for themselves, so they can actually reduce their stress levels on a regular basis. I'm not saying they'll never be stressed again, that's not possible, but they have tools and techniques to actually actively reduce their stress levels, so they can sleep, they can think clearer, they can get out of reactive mode for things, and they can really start to feel a bit more in control.
Wow.
Of their lives a bit more. So yeah. And it's only €250 for 6 weeks, for 12 hours. You know, compared to what I normally charge, that's pretty good going.
That's a steal. That is absolutely a steal. So the type of people that you'd recommend doing this course would be somebody that's, you know, highly stressed at the minute, or probably not even, like, it's just somebody that you'll give them the tools to help them basically have a, you know, be less stressed in their life, get through the day.
Just feel like you have a bit of control back, really, and
Yeah.
not feel so overwhelmed and so out of control of everything, and that things are controlling you, you know, to just be more present, to just bring our awareness back to what's really happening right here, right now, instead of living in the past or worrying about the future. To just keep, you know, and I have to do these tools as well. I mean, they only work if we use them.
Yeah.
You know, we're all human, and it's about how do we really navigate through life without it just totally, you know, overwhelming us and taking over. And to me, NLP is still by far one of the most powerful, and it's so interesting because people want to know about themselves. They want to know, well, what makes you tick.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, NLP is like a manual, you know, for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You get to figure out actually, you know, how is it that you think the way that you do.
Perfect. Brilliant. Okay. I had one last question that's gone out of my head. Oh yeah. So NLP. So that's this Saturday for 6 weeks. The other question I want to ask you is: can you still do one-on-ones in NLP with people? You're doing them online.
Just on Zoom. Yeah.
You don't have to be in the room.
I work with people all over the world. Yeah, the UK, New Zealand, Israel, where else? UAE. Yeah, from all over. So. Yeah, it's obviously, I much prefer the human experience and having someone, you know, sitting with me in my office, but no, this works equally well, to be honest. And it means there's no travel time. There's no downtime for anything else. People can just, so people can contact me, and I'm starting to get busy again because people are starting to realize that, you know, we're in this for a while now, and as I said, stress is becoming a major issue, and I'm genuinely concerned about people. I'm genuinely concerned that you know, that these tools are not taught in everyday life.
Yeah.
So it's really important that people do have these skills now.
Definitely.
More important than ever. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree. Sara, thank you so much. That was amazing. And now I have a much clearer picture and description of what you do. And it's amazing. I didn't actually realize the amount that you do and the good work that you do. Just amazing. When all this is over, I'll be down, or we will definitely do one-on-ones on Zoom. Definitely, it sounds amazing. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, well, thank you
again. Thank you so much for your time. You're so good. And yeah, I'll pop all your details on, and the details of the course starting on Saturday as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks very much. Bye.